Hello and welcome again to the Cetri Spy Boss Research Up channel. So in this video we shall be discussing cross exchange rates. So cross exchange rates is basically the exchange rate between two currencies that does not involve the local or home currency directly. So it is the exchange rate the two currencies derived from a third currency. So it is a situation where the exchange rate between the two countries can be determined from their respective exchange rates from the third country. So it's like you have three currencies. You have dollar, pound, and euro. You know the exchange rate between dollar and pound. You know the exchange rate between dollar and euro. So because you know the exchange rate between dollar and pound and dollar and euro, even if you don't know directly the exchange rates between pound and euro, you'll be able to determine this using the anchor currency, which is the dollar, the third currency. So cross exchange rate is like a transitive rule, which says that if A is better than B and B is better than C, then definitely A is better than C. So in other words, you can be able to derive the relationship between A and C, since you know that A is better than B and B is also better than C. So it's something like that. So, but in general, to calculate it, the cross rate between A and B, when you have three currencies, A, B, and C, and A and C, you know A and C, they also know B and C, can be calculated as follows. A given B, that is A in terms of B, is equals to the currency of A divided by C. So in other words, um, the exchange rate between A and C divided by the exchange rate between B and C, where in both cases, currency C is serving as the quoting currency. So for instance, suppose you know the exchange rate between Sierra Leone and USA. You know the exchange rate between Sierra Leone and USA. They also know between Sierra Leone and France. So because you know this, it's so easy. You know the exchange rate between Sierra Leone, USA, and Sierra Leone, France. Then you can derive the exchange rate between USA and France, because you already know that USA has a relationship with Sierra Leone, then France also has. Through those two relationships, you can imply the relationship between USA and France. That's the idea. So the exchange rate between Sierra Leone and USA could be written as US dollar per leone. I mean, leone per US dollar. How many leones you need to have one US dollar? Then the exchange rate between Sierra Leone and France would be euro per leone. How many euro you need per leones? So to illustrate this, you can calculate the cross rate between USA and France by simply dividing the exchange rate US dollar leone by euro leone. But if you were finding euro stroke US dollar, then the euro per leone will be in the numerator, divided by the dollar per leones. So this implies simply dividing the two exchange rates can give you the exchange rate between USA and France. However, you should note that the formula works best when you make the common currency, in this case, which is Sierra Leone, as the quoting currency. It comes second in the quoting terms. Alternatively, you can simply make the common currency as the base currency in both exchange rates, and then equate the common currency by itself. You can simply make leones the base currency, that's the first currency in both exchange rates, and equate it by itself. So in other words, you make, instead of US dollar per leone, now you have leone US dollar and leone euro. So but leone is equal to leone. So if you say leone equals to this, it simply means the amount of US dollar you have will be equals to euros. You're able to know the exchange rate between US dollar and euros. So more practical example. Assume we have the exchange rate between leons and Liberian dollar is $1.5 per leon, and the exchange rate between Guinean franc and the Liberian dollar is 0.80 Liberian dollar per Guinean franc. So we know the exchange rate between Liberian dollar and leon. We also know between Liberian dollar and franc. Then the cross exchange rate between the leons and the Guinean franc is 1,875 Guinean franc per leon. So is the statement true or false? So to determine this, we need to calculate the cross rate between Guinean franc and leons in terms of Guinean franc. So we want to know the cross rate between Guinean franc and leons in terms of the Guinean franc. So you look at the common currency. The common currency between the leons and Guinean franc is simply the Liberian dollar. So alternative formula, we use that one. So we therefore make the Liberian dollar the base currency in both exchange rates. The first exchange rate states that 1 leon is equal to 1.50 Liberian dollar. So to make the Liberian dollar the base currency, divide both sides by the value of the Liberian dollar, which is 1.50. So you end up having $1 equals to 2/3 leons, which is 0.67 leons. So you also know that 1 Guinean franc GFC is equivalent to 0.8 Liberian dollar. So to make Liberian dollar the base currency, divide both sides again by 0.80. So it gives you 1 Liberian dollar equivalent to 5/4 Guinean franc. So now, since we are finding the exchange rate between leons and Guinean franc, we simply equate equation 2 by 1. So you equate both, since now we now have dollar equal to dollar, so $1 equals to $1. So in this case, you have leon 2/3 being equals to Guinean franc 5/4. So since we are finding leon in terms of Guinean franc, I mean the Guinean franc is a quoting currency, that will make the leons the base currency by dividing both sides by 2/3 from equation 2. So in this case, 1 leon will be equivalent to 1.875 Guinean franc. So instead of what the statement